On tonight's program, Greendragoon talks about the sequel to his new mission.
Part 1 actually ends in this very large cliffhanger.
We talk about healthy competition. Now, do you compare your average rating, see if you're gaining?
I didn't at first. I didn't want to think like that, but
I do that with
then I
CaptPFDennis.
caught up to him briefly.
And Stowe's community manager comes by to give us a send-off.
As an artist, you're going to always want to work on your project. Always make it better.
Join us for the Foundry Roundtable. Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively devoted to the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me are my fellow knights of the Foundry Roundtable, the craziest space hippie since The Way to Eden aired in 1969, Hippiejohn.
How you doing, everybody?
The only half-human, half-Xindi avian known to science, Markhawkman.
Right.
And fresh from slaughtering 18th century civilians, Greendragoon.
Peace and long life.
I'd like to start tonight with some advice that, since this is our first podcast, I asked Terry Lynn, who of course is a veteran of several podcasts, for some advice for newbie podcasters, and she said, I'm paraphrasing here, be yourself and act like you know what you're doing. So, something to aspire to, I think. So what we'll do now is we'll introduce ourselves. Everybody will give a brief bio and maybe list a couple of the missions we have out there. So, Mark, let's start with you.
Well, I'm Markhawkman, and I've been doing all sorts of different computer game modding things since I was like 15. But the first game I ever actually did a mod for was this old QBasic game called Nibble. I recoded it so that you could change the color that your snake was when it was going around the screen, and added a bunch of extra paths. I've done a whole lot of other things.
Hippie, how about you?
I'm a storyteller in real life. It's what I do. I own a company that runs live action role playing events for young adults and teens that focuses on just teaching and giving an opportunity to instill the values of things like leadership and teamwork and anti-bullying, and we do it all through the mirror and all through the lens of a fantasy story where they get to be the heroes. So it's really play therapy that just lets them work things out. I tell stories for a living, and I find an online game, the first thing I want to do with it is tell stories. So.
All right, and Greendragoon.
Well, I am a graphic artist animator. I haven't been in the Foundry quite as long, but I've been following it since it opened. I haven't done too much in the modding scene, although I did play around a little with trying to mod Elite Force.
Yeah, I definitely remember Elite Force. I did a little bit there.
Definitely one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah. And I am Drogan1701. By trade, I'm a journalist, run a small newspaper. I've been a Star Trek fan almost my entire life, and of course, jumped on Star Trek Online as early as I possibly could, just to open beta. And the second I heard of the Foundry coming out, I immediately started typing. I immediately started outlining a story, even before I knew what it was and what the limitations and features were going to be. So, and I've taken a few breaks here and there, but I've been with the Foundry since the very beginning.
Cool.
Okay. And I'll add that both Bazag and Chooch99, fellow authors, are interested in joining us down the road, so hopefully we will be able to add them. And also, hopefully tonight we will have a special guest calling in. So we will hopefully get to that later.
We'll see.
And now we come to the first of our two structured segments. What are you working on? Where each of the authors will talk about what Foundry projects they have going, be it a mission, or a trailer for a mission, or machinima-based using the Foundry, things like that. Hippie, let's start with you.
Right now, a lot of people call me lazy because I don't want to make custom maps. I don't want to figure it out. I don't want to build in the sky. I just don't have time to figure it out quite yet. So I keep taking cryptic maps and keep trying to repurpose them. And I watch what people are doing when they're making these beautiful transporter rooms out of, the top of a barrel and a Klingon wall light. And I'm amazed at what people are able to do. And I sit back and I say, I don't have time to do that. So I've been working on repurposing some of the stock maps, and by doing that I mean really changing them. Right now I'm working on turning the Odyssey Bridge into the ops level of a small science space station, and it's going really well.
Cool.
That sounds like pretty cool. Can you talk a little bit about, kind of like what techniques you're doing to use that?
Well, the reason that I did that is it goes back to the idea of the transporter room. I don't have the time to make one. The Odyssey Bridge has a really cool little transporter pad built in the back, so I just started grabbing, the walls, the different walls that exist, and building my own hallways out of the walkways and the ramps that existed on the Odyssey Bridge, and cutting more than half of the central area off to make it so that you're not seeing the whole big captain seat and the whole, most of the officers' chairs are just gone. There's only a very few things that are saved, and it's just a matter of putting doors, finding that one tiny spot on the bridge that will fit the turbo lift that is going to, lead to other decks on the station. It's really just been a matter of finding things that are big enough to hide some of the things that Cryptic has on the map.
I had that same problem when I was trying to build something out of Utopia Planitia. I was trying to make that into a different starbase, so I had to cover up the big thing that said Utopia Planitia on it.
Yeah. When the halls and the areas that you're dealing with that you're trying to disguise are really, really long, that it's very difficult.
and the ones on that bridge have this smooth curve to them.
Yeah. So it's been a challenge. It's been interesting.
It's a very cool looking bridge. I've always liked it.
I
did not know it had a transporter pad.
It on the very back, yeah. There are, in fact, I think only 3, not counting Earth Space Dock, 3 cryptic maps that actually have a transporter pad, and I was like, which one of these am I going to be able to try to turn into them?
Let's see, there's Facility 4028.
Okay, that makes another one. I wasn't thinking of that one.
Sure, what else?
There's
Starbase 39, yeah.
There's Starbase 39, and there's the Defiant Interior.
Actually, wait. I forget which one it is.
Is it like Celeste Station one?
One of the board's infected Starbase map.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
the one that's like kind of a copy of Starbase 39.
That's
that
right.
one has that. That
What
one
is
has
it,
an
Sebring interior or something like that?
Yeah, Siberian or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've been working on, is playing around with a lot of different cryptic maps and saying, what kind of things am I going to need to do? And I don't have this particular asset that I need. What am I going to use? How am I going to disguise this thing? And it's just been a lot of fun.
You should post a screenshot of that in that build your transporter room thread. Sort of, one of these, I incorporated this little transporter pad into my map as a whole, making it a starship into a non-starship.
It's been interesting. That's all I can say.
Very cool.
Eventually, people will get to visit that station.
Greendragoon, what are you working on?
Currently, I'm working on part 2 of my first and only Foundry mission so far, In the Shadow of Midas. And a lot of people have been bugging me to get that one done.
It's a very good mission. That's why.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about it for those of us who haven't played it, myself included?
Basically the general plot is that you're sent to... Basically, the Midas array, which you saw in Voyager, use this micro wormhole to send messages across, and in current time, in 2409, they've actually managed to expand that so they can actually send a whole starship through. So they've sent 2 starships through to kind of test this out, go do a little exploring, come back. except they didn't come back. And so you're sent in part 1 to go find out what happened to them.
Going to strange new worlds, I suppose.
Yeah, well, you run into some problems on the way, and part 1 actually ends in this very large cliffhanger.
That was good. Which, of course, is why everybody's pressuring you for another one.
Yes, so I'm working on that one. I'm about 40 or 50% of the way through.
Mark, what are you working on?
I keep pondering going back and fixing things with some of the older missions that I've done, but at the moment the only thing I've actually been working on in Foundry is my mission for the next challenge. This one, you get sent by Starfleet Command to a solar system to figure out what's going on, because they've detected that someone is artificially messing with the stability of the star, about who it is and why. And, well, so the first thing I did with that was creating a cool-looking space map. And most of the rest of the mission is going to take place on board a starbase that's a Boslic Tholian.
How do you like to go about building a cool space map? I know Hippie there doesn't enjoy building space maps.
I don't.
The number one thing I've discovered about building space maps is you have to get the backdrop right, otherwise it just feels off.
Absolutely agree.
The one I have built, I spent about 8 hours on the backdrop. I'm not kidding. 8 hours.
I think I find the best way is to kind of figure out a color scheme that you want and then just sort of confine yourself to that color scheme. Mm-hmm. And that narrows down the things that you're going to want to use a little bit.
There are also certain colors that kind of imply certain moods.
Also, yeah.
True.
I really
True,
like
certainly.
blue, personally. I am also kind of working on my mission for the next challenge, the Tholian challenge. It's going to be, I've actually showed Hippie one of the maps so far. It's this big,
it looks nice,
cool city market kind of a thing. I'm even putting one of his space pirate crews from his actual in-game crew in there, thanks to the import and export costume function. This is going to be fun.
I love that is like that. I love that came with so many unintended consequences.
Yeah. I'm also putting Crazy Chulaski in there. He's going to be selling his cheap hose. For anyone that doesn't know, Crazy Chulaski is a character on Primetime UGC, the video cast. He's an Orion slave trader who sells used women. It's quite humorous. But it's slow going. I'm working on space maps at the moment, but I've got a few ground maps that I still definitely need to finish up, and I need to finish scripting about the last half, which is always the slow part for me. You'd think, as a actual professional writer, that would be the easy part, but it's not.
Never is.
The nice thing, though, it's the funny thing about the Foundry is that you're almost telling a story entirely in quotes. It's a story that's entirely in things people say.
It's a different kind of writing. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that I do is write in script form a great deal, and it's a different kind of writing.
It absolutely is. Well, now we come to the second of our structured segments. What have you played? This we will talk about Foundry missions that we've played recently, what we liked, what we haven't, advice for the author, essentially little mini reviews. So, Greendragoon, what have you played recently?
Well, in general, lately I've been going through Captain Revo's 5-part series, starting with the Worst of All Worlds, and I am up through the 9 of Deep Space. It so happens the last of his missions. I can't recall the name at the moment.
It's a strange title, 9 of Deep Space.
Yeah,
great.
You probably need to play it to understand what that means, right?
It centers around Deep Space 9, so...
It's just a clever play on words. It's just taken, to me, I think it was just taking Deep Space Nine and flipping it around a little bit. It's not like, it's cool. I will agree with Greendragoon over there. That's a cool mission.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I've been playing his series too.
He's one of the more prolific Foundry authors, I think. Doesn't he have like dozens of missions?
Yeah, and he's one that's been doing it since the beginning. I mean, I think one of the first missions I played was Worst of All Worlds. That was back on Tripwire.
Yeah, that was almost one of the first missions ever.
I remember when I saw him post about publishing the 5th part of the series and saying that it had been, 2 years, and here it is. Here comes part 5. So that means 2 years ago, and that's when the Foundry launched, I think, right? I mean, that's when he did part 1. So
something like that,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in and among doing that, he's published all these other dozens of missions that just,
Yeah, well, his 5th part has been like 1 or 2 above my mission. So every time I go to check to see how mine's doing, his is right there.
Now, do you compare your average rating, see if you're gaining on him any?
I didn't at first. Didn't want to think like that, but
I do that with
then
CaptPFDennis.
I caught up to him briefly, and I couldn't help but making comparisons.
I've got my spotlight and CaptPFDennis' spotlight are over on the KDF side right together, and I always just kind of look as...
Oh, you guys.
Hey, nothing wrong with a little healthy competition, right?
There's nothing wrong with a little healthy competition. I just think the numbers are funny. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, it's hard to ignore after a while.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore, but I've got to agree with Terry. With everything I've ever heard her say about the rating system, it's broken. It's just inherently... anytime you give something ratings 1 to 5, it's always going to end up at a median somewhere around 3. It's why they placed they used to just place the generic star rating at 3, when people didn't, vote anything and just clicked OK. You just
Well, I think that has a huge part to do with it, because I suspect that any mission before a certain time that had gained up some ratings under the system when that default 3 came in, kind of averages lower than, like, say, a new mission who doesn't have to deal with that problem.
I think it's because the system's gone through, like, just on the whole, the Foundry's gone through so many changes that the rating system
I don't think it's
remained
that
broken.
the rating system was designed with a much lower player base in mind.
Probably.
And
That's true.
that,
they can't have been expecting 2 million.
yeah.
But I suspect 2 million people don't play the Foundry. I mean,
I expect 2 million people don't play the Foundry, but I remember when they said 2 million, everybody's question was, is that 2 million captains? Well, I have 8 captains on my account. No, they meant 2 million accounts. Now, whether they're all active or not, and how many people have more than one.
Well, I know at least a few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know personally a few accounts that are not active.
Yeah, same. I have friends.
2 of the founders of my fleet actually quit playing the game a few weeks after they founded the fleet and left it in the hands of the current fleet leader. And their names are still listed in the fleet log as being members of the fleet. But if you look at them, they haven't played the game since early 2011. I think one of them was late 2010. And both of them are lieutenant commander or lower.
Yeah.
When I first joined the game, I was in a guild or a fleet called Starfleet Defenders or something like that. Great group of guys. I have no idea if any of them play anymore, because I took this huge long break and I came back and fleet was gone and no idea if any of them are still around. But
I'm
if
sure
you are, hello.
It's part of the cycle, though. I mean, that's what free to play games do. It's what MMOs do. I mean, I have a housemate that pays for he pays a monthly subscription for any MMO that catches his fancy, and he'll play it for a month. If he likes it, he'll pay for 2, and then when he's bored by it, he'll move on to something else. I mean, he's one of those churn players, for an MMO, and he might come back to it, but he might not.
He's a drifter.
Yeah.
Honestly, I haven't been playing very many Foundry missions except for the ones that the other people did for the previous challenge.
And how were those?
I played through all of those and liked most of them.
Because I didn't get a chance to play those, so I don't really know how they work.
Yeah.
There were some really good entries.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. The one that ended up winning the spotlight, that was my second favorite.
Yay!
For the record, now that one is Spectres, Episode 6 by Hippiejohn here. I confess I played about 5 minutes of it just to get a good screenshot for the little promo on the side of Starbase UGC. I never got around to finishing it.
Al, I suggest anybody who plays it play 4 and 5 first. Play the official cryptic missions first.
All right, well, Hippie, what have you played recently?
Well, I've made kind of a focused, not really a focused effort. It's been completely accidental. I read, I browsed the mission database on the forums, or the mission, hey, who's been listing missions, and one of the PvP players, one of the guys who's like one of the big PvP players, has been making a Klingon series that is criminally underplayed. It has the same, it has some of the issues that a lot of Foundry missions have. My own included. I might have, mistyped something and not noticed it, and nobody caught it on a playthrough, or, and I never caught it on on one of my playthroughs for spelling, and sometimes, there's grammar here or there, and, but it's all really little things to this really, really engaging storyline. And like I said, this guy, it's drkfrontiers, drkfrontiers, is the author's name, and it's, the Crucible of War Battle series or something like that, and it's a 5-part, Klingon epic. I've just finished playing part 3, and the interesting thing, the reason I mentioned that this guy is a PvP player, is because something that I've noticed is his missions are different, and he's the kind of combat designer that I like. On my Foundry challenge, I cut back my combats because I was afraid that people would downrate me if they got killed and had to respawn too often, or if they had to use too many regenerators if they were playing on Elite. He doesn't hold back. He's pushed some of his mobs farther apart in space, in response, I think, to getting a lot of, the common feedback, wow, these guys are really hard. I've been playing them on Elite, and it's the most fun combat I've had in a long time, and I think it's because it's designed by a guy who understands how PvP works. He understands how combat works, and I've never had ground enemies set up to flank me before. Ever in a Foundry mission. He set them up very specifically so that when they came into the scene, when they beamed into the scene, won't give anything away, I was inside of a prison, but when the NPCs came into the scene where the story had led me to, when the enemy mobs appeared and beamed in, they were flanking me from the get-go, and it was horrifying.
But in a good way.
In a good way, because it forced me to say, whoa, I have to, I really had to remember how to use my abilities and what to do, and so this morning, I saw one of the other people that I see posting the PvP forums. There was a mission, it's called Operation Tripwire or something. It all takes place on one map, and it's just one of those, the combats again are set up in such a way that they're interesting, and they're not these the two PvP players that I've played their maps and their missions so far, they're just not afraid to throw captain mobs out there. If you can't take it, respawn or warp out, whatever, they're not afraid, because that's what they're used to, probably.
They're pretty hardcore bunch of guys.
Right, I'm not a PvP, I'm not a PvPer, so I don't get that, but man, those missions are fun. The combats are challenging and exciting, and that's what I've been up to as far as what I've been playing.
Did any of you guys play my diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant mission?
Yeah, yes. That was for Foundry Challenge 5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Did you fight Endless?
Did I fight Endless?
Endless.
No.
Well, because one thing I did in that mission that I'm guessing nobody figured out on their own was that there's this one object where if you interact with it, it'll give you this prompt to interact with another object, and if you do that, Endless will switch from being an NPC that you talk to a captain level enemy that will try to beat the crud out of you.
That's pretty awesome.
The thing is, though, is that the way I set up that encounter, the object that you interact with, you're going to be facing away from her, so when she spawns, she'll be behind you.
Yeah, those are...
That's dastardly.
It's cool.
I did not get a
missions
single
fun.
complaint about that, because apparently no one noticed.
So it's either nobody has actually spawned that particular mob, or they didn't mind.
Yeah, I certainly didn't.
Well, I'll tell you though, I love optional combat. I absolutely love it. I have almost gotten rid of all of the kill objectives when I make missions now.
I purposely, in my mind, when I'm thinking about it, I purposely try to find a way to make them not appear.
Mm-hmm.
Kill objectives are silly.
'Cause I've got one now where there's going to be two fleets in front of you. You have a little dialogue, and then there's two fleets in front of you that start engaging each other. And the only objective you have is a reach marker on the far side. And all it says is just make your escape. Now, you can stay and fight, or you can just blow right through.
Well, that's very cool. I like it.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a pretty cool sequence.
Well, for diplomacy, I did actually have a battle that you have to do, but it's just like this 3-stage battle where you have to fight off 3 waves of enemies that are incoming into the system. Why? Well, you're there on a diplomatic mission, and apparently the people who sent you there screwed up, and now the people that you're there to negotiate with want you to help them get rid of these guys.
Now, when you were writing, did you come up with any sort of, workaround for the Prime Directive?
Well, that's just it. That this one was a KDF mission. So it's as simple as, we want you to kill them. Who cares why?
That sounds very Klingon,
Yeah.
So what are you even playing, Drogan?
Me, I have played a few missions recently. I tested an early version of CaptPFDennis' new mission.
I did too. That's some beautiful maps.
Do you know what he's calling it now? He changed the title.
Oh, he did? I don't know what he's
I
calling
can't
it now.
Maybe he'll chime in on the forums when we post this or something. But that was a fun one, and he's done some great stuff with patrols in space.
Yes.
Some really fantastic stuff, and I recommend you guys try it. It is the first Foundry mission that I've had in a long time, or ever maybe, that has actually required precision flying.
Yep.
And it was so much fun.
Was that the one that Kirk did where you fly around inside a Borg cube?
I've done that one.
No.
And I really enjoyed it, although the difficulty was sort of kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
It was funny. He was getting slaughtered, and I was doing just fine, even though we seemed to have almost the same equipment on our shuttles.
Huh.
But no, this new one, I'll try not to give away too much of it, but there's a point where you have to fly alongside another ship to get through a certain area of space. And you have to stay right next to it. And of course, it's changing course and going different speeds and things like that. And so you have to really manage your throttle, and you have to manage your, make micro adjustments, and it's so much fun.
Well, one of the ferry missions that Cryptic did has a similar feature.
Mm-hmm. It's similar to that.
It is. Yes, it is similar to that.
Another thing I've played recently was Woody Valley's Honor in Delivery, which is, a tongue-in-cheek episode about stealing pizza from Earth as you know, if you're Klingon guys. It's all about helping an old former ambassador get this pizza back from the Earth, and then you end up taking hostages, some of which are Foundry authors, buddies of Woody Valley's and mine too as well. So that one was a lot of fun. Woody Valley has a lot of great missions, really, and he puts a lot of himself into his missions, which is fun. He does. They're very personal, and not a lot of people do that, and I really respect that, because I sure wouldn't. And then I wanted to talk about another little one I haven't actually played personally, but somebody posted it on the forums, and I thought it was fantastic.
I think we're talking about the same one. I went and looked at the YouTube video as soon as he posted it.
The space race. This guy has created a racetrack inside, in the Foundry, using kind of the same techniques that Kirkvat did in his shuttle mission, where he's used the Borg pieces to create an indoor area, and essentially kind of a figure eight. But you can just get in with a bunch of your buddies and have a race around there, and it looked like a blast.
It did. I want to
try it.
I can't imagine having fun doing it alone. And I like the way he posted it as another way to PvP.
Yeah.
It seems very creative. I really want to jump in there with a couple of people and be like, all right, let's race this thing. And it looks like so much fun.
I love those sort of creative ways that people use the Foundry that you just like, wow, I never would have thought of that.
Well, one person in the fourth challenge, he actually made a map where your goal was to fly around through caves inside an enormous asteroid.
Wow. Do you remember who did that?
Clinto Bean, I think.
Very cool. Well, that's kind of what we excel at, Foundry authors, is kind of taking the maps that are there and just doing unexpected, crazy things with them.
Well, the way he did it is that there's several of the asteroid space object props that are donut shaped. He just took a bunch of them and stacked them together to make tunnels that were large enough to fly through. And then for the big rooms, he'd take several large asteroids that were kind of
together
and put some of them down to make a floor and some of them to make a ceiling. It must have taken a long time to put together that many asteroids.
Would take a long time.
That would take a heck of a long time.
Yeah.
Was this before or after copy paste?
I don't know.
Good question.
Well, you have to try to arrange each of them anyway, so, pasting them, all that would do is give you multiple objects to rearrange.
Yes and no, depending on how many turns you want to put in it. It really depends on how many turns you want to put in it.
The map he ended up making had a very fluid shape to it.
Yeah.
Some of them were actually straight, so you could have, used copy pasting for some of them. But you also had one where you were going at like a 60-degree angle.
Very cool. Very cool.
Things like that have certainly become easier since we have the group select and copy paste.
Yes.
Yeah. Another thing that Clinto did for that one was he had an interior map where you're walking around exploring this alien ship, but it's several small rooms with a bunch of shelves, not just on the walls, but in the middle of the room, making these like neatly arranged walkways inside the room. Very detailed.
Using shelves for walkways, that's interesting.
Yeah, I could see it. I honestly could.
Well, what it was, you're not walking on top of them, you're walking between them to get from point A to point B.
Okay, so he's sort of created hallways you might say.
You said walking on top of things. That's the thing that's frustrated me the most this week. That the top of invisible objects have no collision. That pisses me off.
Objects, no. But the invisible walls.
Something that one person found out about the two-fleet freighter recently is that if you go into the brig on a two-fleet freighter, you can climb up on top of one of the jail cells inside the brig. There's a problem, though. There's this open spot in the top of the cell that you can fall through or jump through if you don't. However, you can't get back out ever.
That's really cool, actually. I like it.
So you can incarcerate yourself. That's pretty funny.
That is very funny. I like it.
So you would have to leave the interior, right?
Yeah, you have to completely leave the ship to get out of it.
I like that.
I think I ran into that problem with my mission. I seem to remember having to put an invisible wall around the top of the cage in my mission.
Okay, so the reason that the fact that invisible objects, Drogon already knows what I'm probably about to say, is the whole costume import editor thing has it's allowed us to do some pretty fun and really wacky things, because ship costumes can be put onto you make a ship costume, you export it, you can put that costume onto a ground character. So you can have these ships that are basically make you look like the size of Gulliver's Travels floating right next to you on the ground, and it would be so much easier if an invisible object that was 10 feet squared had collision on the top of it. Because if you try to put a person on, because you're reskinning a person to do this, to look like a starship, and if they fall through the top and they land on the ground, half of the starship is on the ground because their center point, their feet, middle point of the ship. So the only way to do it is to line it up on top of an invisible wall, actually.
Which is very difficult.
Which is incredibly difficult. But
now what you can do is you can stack a few right next to each other.
It's incredibly difficult, but I figured out exactly how to do it, and I'm going to tell you guys and anybody who listens to this exactly how to do it. It's as simple as copy and pasting your exact whatever X and Z coordinates. Because if you put the wall at a place facing a certain direction, your X and Z coordinate is the middle point of that line that the wall is. If you put a person at that exact same X and Z coordinate, you just have to put it at like some Y that is definitely going to be up above the top of the wall, like 6 or something, 10. Because then the person will fall right on top of the wall and the ship will sit on top. It's just those coordinates have to be exactly the same.
Sure.
Because the middle points work.
But this essentially allows you to put a starship, like high up in the air above a ground map, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So it can look like it's flying up there.
Another possible way to do that is that there's this tiny, I believe its name is grate. You just put the grate on the map and then give the starship like you said, the same X and Z coordinates with a Y coordinate of +1. And so that it's literally laying on top of the grate. And the grate is so small that even if you were underneath it, you would barely notice it was there.
The problem is if the grate is on the ground, the point that the person that you have reskinned as the starship, their feet are essentially at like the center line of the starship. So when they're standing at ground level, half of the starship is buried.
So part of that starship would clip through whatever it's resting
right
on.
Through the ground, whatever it's
resting
resting on.
Now that might not be a problem if the starship is big enough to conceal whatever it's standing on.
Exactly.
If you get a small enough object that they can still stand on.
See, that's why I use the invisible wall.
Because it's invisible anyways.
And it's also really small. So.
Yeah.
Okay then.
But I've been thinking about trying to use this to, if you have a custom interior map where you've got a window, maybe you can put a starship outside the window.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
Which, of course, forced perspective, it'll look like it's far away.
Right.
because it's small.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
I'm already planning how I
person-sized.
can use this.
See, we're already seeing a benefit for this
As soon as I
podcast. Yeah.
figured out how to do it, I started planning the same thing, Dragoon.
It so happens Part 2 already has a window where I wanted to put starships.
There you go. Perfect.
There you go.
All right, now we're going to come to the roundtable portion. We've each been thinking of Foundry-related topics to discuss with the group. So, Mark, why don't you start us off?
Well, I've been experimenting with. Well, in the last challenge, I experimented with making a pseudo interior map, which didn't come out quite the way I was hoping it would, and I ended up not putting in the ceiling for the map because the approach I was using on that map would have more or less meant that when you looked at the mini map, you would see the ceiling and nothing else. So I decided not to bother with the ceiling. Also, doing an outdoor ground map actually on the ground as an interior can work, but in this case, it didn't really work as well as I was hoping it would. So for the current Foundry Challenge map, I'm taking the Argelius 2 interior and building the entire thing in the black space on the map.
Yeah.
I'm just taking a bunch of the really big foundation platforms and using those as room floors, then just, build walls around to define the shapes of the rooms and put whatever props inside the room. And I'm going to have to put ceilings on it, and I'm not sure exactly what that's going to do with the mini-map, but so far, for this one, in preview mode, the mini-map is a blank screen anyway, so it's not going to matter.
I'm thinking you might need to put light. If you're building in the black, you might need to put light out there.
I have noticed, because I've been doing this as well, that it does make it dark. It's on some maps. And it's strange, because I'm doing it on the same map that I've done it on before. The first one was not dark at all. But this one is.
Yeah, see, I haven't built in the black, so that's just a guess.
Well, that's just it with this one, though, is that I get absolutely nothing on the mini-map.
Huh.
I talked to Drogan earlier about these giant crystal mushroom-shaped things that I was working with because they have this cool-looking cave in the bottom of them. Those don't show up at all. You can't.
You don't see those on the minimap?
Nope.
Huh.
I literally do not see anything.
How strange.
That I'm building in the black space in the mini map. I have no idea why.
Now, are you building over the existing geometry, or to one side of it, or below it?
It's off to the side of it.
Off to the side.
I guess somewhat below it. Well, actually, I believe that the beam-in point for this map is actually at 0 altitude. This Argelius 2 is one of those where the cryptic map that uses it has several map sections that you go through. You have this beam-in point where you have this, I think it's like bar or something. Then you go from there through these bunch of hallways, and eventually you get to this shuttlecraft hangar. But each of the times that you go from one section to another, you walk up to a closed door, you click to open the door, and you just mysteriously find yourself somewhere else.
Yeah,
Cool.
In the cryptic mission they used that. That's what they did,
Yeah.
right? But it doesn't work.
So-
that doesn't work in the Foundry, though.
No,
Yeah.
I wish you
It's
could.
just a closed door.
I was thinking of using it and just redressing it, and I actually thought up a few cool ideas as to what I could have done with it, but I just decided that the annoyance of dealing with the fact that I could only use like one out of the 3 sections of the map at a time was just too much work to be worth it, so I decided to just build a complete space station in black space.
Now, of course, you can always use that little trick of Pendra's where you spawn a bunch of walls on top of the player and they get teleported to the next spawn point.
I did actually kind of think about doing that, but from what I've heard, it's not a perfectly reliable one, because I did it. You may have seen this test mission I published called Movement Testing. The first map is something called Linear Accelerator. It's actually working with something like that, is that when it works right, what happens is you walk straight forward from the beam end point, and when you reach this spot, you hit a location trigger, which causes this giant stone cube to spawn centered on your location. Sometimes it will cause you to be relocated to the top of the stone cube. Sometimes it will cause you to be relocated to the side of the stone cube. I have absolutely no idea what determines which happens.
So I've recently thought of an interesting way of movement, and I think when you're spawning things around people and trying to push them around, that's really unreliable in general.
Yeah.
I don't see that being a reliable way to move the player where you want them to be necessarily. But I've been thinking, like, as you've been talking about, like, you know, what you're trying to do, one thing that occurs to me is, and it looked like a lot of work. You know, Drogan brought up CaptPFDennis's mission, you know, earlier. It's a different mission of his called, that I saw the first time that I ever saw somebody do this, called Happiness is a Warm Gorn, where he animates a shuttle taking off from the ground leaving a shuttle bay.
Where you spawn a series of them as the player moves.
Spawn as the reach markers have to be so perfectly timed, and you've got to be doing it in something like a hallway, and I mean it's like, you know, the reach markers have to, you know, despawn and respawn, and it's like a flip book, you know, and that's what's really happening, and it's like a flip book, and I'm thinking in my mind, what if there were a way to, you know, do something like what Bazog did. When you're going down that hallway where
and you're chasing the thing down the corridor,
as you're using that same sort of animation technique to in addition to moving, animate the area around you.
Now I'll have to interrupt at this point because it's time to call our special guest.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey.
Happy Brandflakes.
Hey,
everybody,
how
welcome
you guys doing?
our community manager, Brandflakes.
Hey, Brandon.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Hey, how's it going?
Thanks for joining us on our first episode.
Our very first episode.
My pleasure. Yeah, no, very excited. I remember my first day on the two podcasts I was on, Neutral Zone, which was a mess, and Priority One, which went a lot better. So it's a very exciting time for you guys.
Of course, Priority One is like, you know, the big guys, the famous guys.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm so proud of them. It's so cool to look back and see how far they've come. And like, I would have loved to be on it and got to interview Walter Koenig and all the other awesome people they're talking to.
I know, right?
Yeah.
100
Well,
plus
you know,
episodes.
that's what we're aspirational for. You know, I'm sure Walter Koenig would like to come in and talk about the Foundry.
Yeah. Hey, you know, I bet you if more Star Trek actors, you know, they're so busy, so it's really hard for them to keep up with all the different Star Trek projects going on. But if they just knew and saw some of the work you guys are doing, I'm sure they'd be floored. I'm floored every day, so I can imagine them who, you know, lived and worked in Star Trek for almost their whole lives, or a large portion of it, would even be more excited. So,
you know, somebody tweeted William Shatner today and see if he knew about Star Trek Online.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that, and I retweeted it, and I favorited it. So, yeah.
That's pretty great. Well, we brought you here to talk about the Spotlight system.
Yeah.
And so I guess my first question is sort of, you know, where are we in the process of getting all the past Spotlights on?
So we're to the point right now where we have a large majority of the past Spotlights added. those that are still outstanding are those that maybe haven't played the game in quite a while, haven't responded. I've reached out multiple times to them, and then a couple that have decided they don't want to continue on with the Spotlight, which is unfortunate but understandable. As an artist, I respect the decision that they don't want to lose editing of their work.
Because, of course, it's a slightly different system now.
Yeah. The other authors, some have come up with great ideas where they've saved a project, and if they want to re-release it, they'll re-release it as 2.0. And I'm definitely not opposed to re-featuring and saying, hey, check out this mission. It's been remastered. But some have still chosen they haven't want to do that. So I'm totally okay with that. We're still, as something I found out today, which I guess I wasn't too aware of, was there was a comment made that there should be an additional feature to it in terms of an extra project slot and even a copy of it. So I've escalated that. We're looking into that. We definitely want to have authors take this as a awesome opportunity. So we don't want to limit them by then restricting them from a project slot that they could delete that project.
I find it both hilarious, and I love that Have went and dug up that quote from a month and a half, 2 months ago.
I asked
in an
him
interview.
to. I said, please find it for me.
Please find that, yeah.
But I'll be surprised. And you know what? I listened to that interview very closely, and I even missed it. So it sounds like that is how it should be, according to that comment. So I've definitely escalated it, and we'll keep looking into it. The biggest thing with the Spotlight is we want authors to feel excited about their Spotlight. We don't want them to feel that they're missing now project slots, so that should be a given. And then as far as the copy, whether they save a copy themselves before or we do it somehow, I think that's important. But I also think, I made some comments, and I kind of stand behind it, and a couple people tweeted back that, as an artist, you're going to always want to work on your project, always make it better. But sometimes you just got to put it up for exhibition. Foundry is a little different because you could pull your mission at any time, but the Foundry Spotlight works a little bit differently from that. And I still want authors to be able to express their creativity and, maybe go back and remaster an old one. So again, I'm not 100% opposed. I'm definitely not completely opposed to the idea of someone saving their project, then releasing a 2.0, and then removing their old one and putting that new one up. The thing is, the reason why we have it where it's locked is a couple things. One, if someone goes in and edits it, and then it becomes all of a sudden against the EULA, we're spotlighting this mission, we're giving rewards, so we're telling people to go play it, but then there's something in there that doesn't conform. If we allowed them to just withdraw it anytime and then refeature it, I personally go through all of these missions. So it would be a lot of work that takes away from some of the other great aspects of the community and some of the other awesome work I'm doing on the Foundry in terms of what's in my capacity. So that's kind of why that's there. It's to ensure it conforms to the EULA, and it stays that way, and it stays a great mission that players can play at any time, whether they're new or old. And also we have like StarTrek.com promoting these missions. Yeah. So when the audience goes back and reads through that, they're reading the audience that the website has. They jump in game wanting to play this mission. It's not there. It's a real letdown. So we want to make sure that that's always available. So yeah, there's a little bit of red tape around it, but it's for the best for the community and for the author themselves.
Well, I know we appreciate you kind of looking for some options for us as well.
Sure, absolutely. I always say I don't make decisions. I definitely suggest and advocate for the community, present both sides of an issue, and report on both. Take a real unbiased look at it when I present a report or something like that.
Sure, of course. Or as you always say, you're not a dev.
Exactly.
Not a dev.
I am not. I am not. But I'm there for the community. I act as your voice. And when I pass along really heated issues, there's definitely some interesting conversations going out there about different aspects of the game.
Of course.
We don't talk about that here.
I really do take an unbiased look at it and report on both sides. So
I think we all appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to the spotlighted thing, one thing that I'm not sure if it was exactly what it was you said, but it sounded kind of like Cryptic was going to, when they spotlight a mission, they're going to make a copy of the mission that is used for the spotlight, and the player who originally created the mission will have a different copy that they can edit or something like that.
So yeah, that's going back to kind of what I said. That it doesn't seem that that's in there right now, and that's what I've escalated. But the mission that's spotlighted is the actual mission. It's not a copy. I literally go in myself and say, I do a special thing where it makes that mission featured, which then locks you out. I don't get to say, lock this person out. It's just part of the process. So what I would like to see, and what I've escalated for, because what it sounded like from the comment is, when we do that, you all of a sudden should be granted an extra slot, and then a copy of that mission is automatically ported to that slot. So that's something I'd like to see. If that can't be done, what I'll make sure to do is that we can somehow get a copy in there for you manually, is what would be great. I'm not 100% sure about that. Or if worst comes to worst, I don't want to leave you guys without a copy. We can unfeature it and then put it up once you've saved a copy. I'll have to run through it again and all that. But it shouldn't be too bad. But I'm hoping we can find an automated solution before we go into any of that. So more updates as I have them. I will definitely share them.
Excellent.
Very, very cool. I want to comment on you made me spotlighting my mission, Brandon, just a whole lot more comfortable. I know that there's been some feedback out there, how uncomfortable it is not being able to touch their missions and all of that. And but the only real issue that I had with it was, you guys were really clear. Once it's spotlighted, we're not going to be able to touch it in any way. Like, at least that was the sense that I got from it. Right. So I made a copy of it so I could make the Klingon version of it, since all the featured episodes have had a KDF and a Fed version. Right. But the real question that I had is, what if some future update to the Foundry breaks the way that things spawn, or breaks the way that patrols work or something? Will we be able, if our mission is affected by that, will we be able to have that pulled down so we can fix that broken patrol or all those broken spawns or whatever's happening to the mission? And you at least indicated to me that if it's something that breaks the mission, you said to me that these are your the whole idea of the Foundry Spotlight, that's your baby right there. So
exactly. I mean, when we're promoting these missions, we're not going to leave them up if they're broken missions. And if they're broken, that means they're down and available for edit. But the thing is, without going into confidential information, if you go back to Dan's interview from that same interview with Primetime UC, he talks a little bit about how it's working now with Neverwinter, and now that they're going live and things like that. So we don't foresee as many things where you might see these big issues that we've seen in the past with something happening. But if there is something, there is no way I'm going to leave up a spotlighted mission that is broken. That doesn't make sense from a QA standpoint. That doesn't make sense from an everything we're doing for the Spotlight standpoint. However, if there is something that is breaking on your mission, it probably is breaking on other people's missions, and we need to remedy that and then do it, like through a patch or whatnot. But the Spotlight's very important, and to me, I can't leave a broken mission up.
I wanted to give you a chance to wanted to give you a chance to get out there what you had told me, because that made me so much more comfortable.
Right.
That's the only reason to be afraid of it not being able to be pulled down.
Exactly. There's no way I'm going to leave a mission up. It's definitely, there's a lot more involved in removing a mission completely. Again, it does take a lot of time to have to get it refeatured. So it'd be something we'd look at first as, is this affecting all missions? You should not have a bug introduced that's only affecting you. You're not doing coding on this mission. You're using the Foundry, which the tool set then applies to all the missions. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see, I guess, our first major test is when some big update will come to it, and then we'll look at it from there and go. But again, for the sake of the Spotlight and for the sake of how it looks from a player playing it, we can't have a broken mission in there.
So I guess more often
that's
than
why
not,
I play through them. I play through them multiple times and try and break it myself before I actually put it up. I mean, I spend hours a week on Foundry Spotlight alone, going through the missions personally and making sure they can be completed.
I was going to ask that if you play all the missions that you Spotlight. I assumed that you did.
Have to. Oh yeah, multiple times. Have to. Not only am I looking for, anything that would be against the EULA, which obviously the authors who are spotlighted are chosen for a reason. They're recommended by their peers, and I want to send an invitation to you guys too. To please recommend spotlights that you have, that you'd like to see. I get them through the forums, I get them through Twitter, You guys have my Twitter. Feel free to DM me or send me a message saying, hey, we've reviewed this one. We really think this should go up. Especially Klingon missions. I think they're really untapped, and there's some amazing Klingon missions out there.
I do too.
With the new Spotlight working the way it is going to be definitely a lot harder to keep it consistent every Friday, because some people might need more time because they know they're going to lose that access to editing and they want to put those final touches. So the goal is to continue doing it every Friday, and for me to plan a couple weeks in advance. So that way we run into where we can have it every Friday. But, there may be some times where it's on a bi-weekly, where every other week we'll switch between missions. But the ultimate goal is to have it every week and to get enough missions lined up that, for the queue to get spotlighted.
Are you finding that a lot of missions are being submitted?
Yeah, there's a ton of submissions through there. And that's something I'll go through and, everyone pretty much wants to submit their mission, And what I'll do is I'll look at those. I'll look at suggestions that have come in. I'll look at reviews. I don't really necessarily look at the rating system. I look at the reviews themselves, what people are writing, and then I'll go through and plan. I'm just like any other player. I go through on my personal account so that I can do the officer reports and then contribute to my fleet starbase and things like that too. So I'm running a lot of Foundry content, and it's awesome because I get to experience new Trek every day.
That I think is the strength of the Foundry, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
Just such variety of new and mostly quite a lot of Trek fans just contributing.
Yep. Exactly. So
where would you like to see, are there more things you would like to do with the Spotlight that we haven't been able to do yet? We're working on the rewards for them. Hopefully we'll have those out sooner than soon, TM. Hopefully this month, if not next month. But they're going to be special rewards that are going to be a lot better than what we saw in Tripwire. They should be a lot better from what I'm hearing. So look out for that. As far as Spotlight, I would love to see more people spotlighted. Man, if we could spotlight a mission every day, that'd be so cool. But I think right now the once a week is what it's coming out to, and then if we need to do every other week, we will. Once Neverwinter launches, if you guys are in the beta, go and check it out. Check out some of the Foundry features. Let us know your feedback on it and what you'd like to see. Just make sure to adhere to NDA and things like that, what you can and can't talk about. So read those. There's some really cool things in there that I think would be great to get in for the Foundry Spotlight. Now, I know that there is an NDA, but I don't know if you can talk about this yet, but I was curious if there is going to be a Spotlight in Neverwinter.
I don't know. Not because it's under NDA, I actually don't know.
Okay. Hey, fair enough.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, do you cover, because you work for Perfect World, right?
Correct.
Do you cover all of their games or just Star Trek Online?
I pretty much am Star Trek. Star Trek is, doing amazing. It's very active. It's very important. And it needs someone full-time dedicated, and that's me. Sometimes I'll even help other community managers as backup and things like that, but primarily you'll see me on STO. Unless someone's on vacation or something like that, I might be helping out, but that's where 100% of my focus is.
Great.
Oh, I can tell you that there are other PWE games that are jealous of Star Trek Online's community manager.
That means a lot. Don't say that. That'll go to his head.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any other questions for Brandflakes?
I've got one that's kind of out there. Tell us one or two of the devs that you know that also play Foundry missions.
They all do. Everyone who plays the game jumps in and plays Foundry. Everyone loves to see what you guys come up with. So keep it up. They love hearing about the challenges that I do, and playing through those. I even send them to Kestrel. I said, hey, you've got to play through this, and she'll go through it. So the whole team is so excited with everything you guys are creating, and it's just beginning. So the future is going to be epic for STO and especially for Foundry. So
very, very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your podcast. Really excited to listen to it. And thanks for having me a part of it. And I look forward to coming back many more times in the future.
Well,
Hey,
we really appreciate
thanks for
you coming
joining
on.
us.
It's really
It's
exciting to have
absolutely
you.
my pleasure. My pleasure. Have a great one. Enjoy, and I'll see you in game and on the forums.
All right, take care, Brandon.
All right,
Take care,
Bye.
Brandon.
The one that I voted for in the last Foundry challenge was actually one of the KDF missions.
Yeah, Sori's was great. I'm betting it was Sori's, right?
Yeah, I think it was his Imperium.
Yeah.
Was the name of it?
Sori is just a master storyteller.
He's a master storyteller.
Guys
His
are
maps.
in, where
Sorry.
you're literally crawling guts of a wrecked spaceship. You actually managed to build sets that it looked like heaps of wreckage. I'm not sure exactly how he did it. He obviously took a bunch of props and stuck them together because the base map was an exterior ground map.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was one of the most intricate interior or customized interior maps that I've ever seen. It was really awesome. I heard him talking on the forums about how the initial climb that you make was just something that your boss wouldn't do. So he not on the forums. I think it was in a chat room somewhere, talking about how the boss would not make that initial climb that you make in the thing, and so he had to think of the storytelling reason for your boss not coming with you. So.
Because they're wusses and they have to stay down at the foot of the mountain.
It was really cool, though. I agree, Mark. That was one of the best maps I ever saw.
The thing I love about Sori is he has such a passion for Klingons.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of folks out there with a real passion for Klingons. It's one of the things that right before hey, cool, we had a special guest for the roundtable portion. The thought that I've been having a lot of in the Foundry recently, that I've been having a lot of around the Foundry recently is how community and how maybe I'm just an idealistic old hippie here, but I think of PvP players who are running this PvP boot camp that they're running, and it would be possible if I knew what kind of mobs would be the right challenge level, and what kind of placements would help them learn about cross healing and putting allies out for them to worry about and things like that. I could help design maps, and training maps and things like that. And the same sort of thing would hold true for STFs. One of the biggest gripes I see when I peruse the forums, which I haven't done in days, but the biggest gripes I see is people that they're like, these people didn't know how to run an STF or whatever, and all I personally would need would be to sit down with some of the elite STF community and say, hey, what kind of things need to be on these maps? And it's something that I've been thinking about that I want to talk more about in the coming weeks, is how Foundry can work together with various communities in the game to help provide both content and things that are needed.
And I would love to have some PvPers on, love to have some STFers, some role players. I'd love to be able to build role-playing maps.
Yeah,
for
so would
people.
I.
I'm not big into role-playing, but I would love to build them a map.
Same, exactly, same. And I see a lot of potential for crossover, real great community work there. So it's one of the things I want to talk about in the coming weeks. It's just occurred to
I've
me.
wanted to do for a while is to be able to build a Foundry map that is a PvP arena. Because, well, let's face it, how many PvP arenas are actually in the game?
Like 6? 7?
Not very many at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like create an interesting map where you have the players going around and doing stuff. I mean, because one of the PvP arenas in the game, you actually win the PvP match, not by KOing your opponents, but by using this console in the middle of the arena to upload a virus.
Oh yeah, Shantytown.
Yeah, it's
Shantytown.
Yeah, I was thinking
That's my personal favorite, actually.
like that. But you know, like making several different ones, because well, sure, having players do it, you might end up with things that are unfair. But let's face it, so.
Well, you know, that'll happen, but I think, you know, if you got, as far as the serious PvP community would go, is they wouldn't accept a map that was unfair.
Well,
They're all about
that's
fair.
That's
They're all about balance.
That's where the whole review thing comes in, is that if you have, if someone designs a ground map that sucks, people will not play it and play one that they actually like.
Sure.
And so it's, to a certain extent, a self-correcting system there.
And I think what you would do is you wouldn't put it in the queuable ones. You would only allow it for private ones.
Yeah, it'd be private.
So
and
you're
it'd be
choosing
you
to
have
go on that
through
map.
the Foundry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, I think we're once we edit this, we'll probably be at about the right time. So I'm ready to say goodbye. I've got to go. I've got to go do some Shakespeare rehearsal now. So
Have fun with that.
Is it 12th night, isn't it?
yes, 12th night.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
12th night. I get to do all the little minor roles. It's really fun. So.
Well, so we'll have everybody say goodnight.
Yeah, gentlemen, that was good night.
Yeah.
It's a very enjoyable experience.
It was.